this is a pretty shit lipstick. But well, I do like how it looks, even though it's kind of patchy, you know. It was like €1 or something. So I can't really complain. Alright, so hello, my dear, and welcome to my library. My name is Ellie, and today I thought we could just relax, 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 and read like we always do. But before that, I thought it would be good if we took a little bit of time to, I don't know, do a little bit of a cleanse and maybe just, I don't know, pull a card from my oracle deck. And the oracle deck, it just has like little phrases, and they are very sweet. And yeah, I think it would be nice to have a sort of phrase or incantation, kind of mantra, whatever, that can kind of make us company while we read. And so for today, I had planned for us to read the beginning of Interview with the Vampire. So maybe 10 pages, 15 pages, because I love vampires. If you can already tell, like, I try to keep a very vampy aesthetic. So, yeah, that's my plan for today. And before we jump to the reading, which I'm going to be showing you the actual book, because I have like a huge book with Interview with a Vampire and 2 more books from Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles. And yeah, so it would be, can you guys imagine if I read the whole thing for the channel? I don't know if you are interested, my dear guest. Then I can, of course, read it for you. I mean, I would be very happy to do that. So yeah, you guys will tell me. And as for the cleansing and kind of a meditation, if you will, before we read, I have my incense here. It's called Divine Power. I love that sound. And it smells divine. I mean, whenever I meditate here in front of my boudoir, my altar, I love burning this incense. I also have lavender incense and sandalwood incense. But this one is just, it's beautiful. And I find that it really promotes concentration and focus while you are meditating. So here I have my little incense. And so you guys already know, to the left, to vanish the bad energies, the jealousy, the envy, the bad things that people want for us. All of the bad things are being erased and they are being cleansed by the smoke. And so I want you to breathe in deeply and tell yourself in your head that all evil things and all negative energies are being cleansed off of you. They no longer serve you. They are not yours to keep. They are not yours to keep. So you can just let them go, thank them for being there, but tell them that they are no longer welcome and you are no longer offering them your energy. And now we do the right, so clockwise, to attract everything good, to attract abundance, confidence, peace, calm and quiet, quiet, quiet. We all need a bit of calm and quiet, don't we? Yeah. So yeah, now you tell yourself that you are open to receiving what is rightfully yours. You're open to receiving the blessings that are waiting for you, the blessings that are destined for you. And you are receiving them right now as we speak. You are attracting everything you seek. Take a very deep breath and think. Think of all the beautiful things that you want, that you deserve. They are being attracted to you right now because you have made space for them when you cleansed away the negative things and when you cleansed away the negative energies. You made room in your consciousness and in your body and in your spirit for the good things. That's why it's very, very important to always cleanse ourselves whenever we are about to meditate, whenever we are about to, well, do anything really. I cleanse myself almost daily. Because you never know what kind of energies people have sent your way. And you never know. So I'm going to finish by cleansing some more of the negative energy. I can see some a bit more stubborn energies around you. Just relax and let them go. They no longer serve you. They no longer serve you. They no longer serve you. it's okay to let them go. Right. Thank you so much for accepting this and for breathing deeply while I cleanse you, while I cleanse us. Alright, so I'm going to put this in my incense holder right back, and then I will pull a little card for you. Alright, alright, perfect, now it's there. Alright, so let us begin shuffling our cards. As you can see, they are very beautiful. They have illustrations by... Oh, I don't remember. It was a French botanic illustrator from the 17th century or the 18th century. I can't remember. But yeah, they are very, very beautiful cards. Beautiful cards with a beautiful message and beautiful, 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 beautiful energies. So let's see what message we need to hear right now. So what message we could integrate into our lives. Okay. Please tell us what we need to hear right now. Tell us what we need to hear right now. Oh, how beautiful. The trumpet Gentiana Akaulis. Power and healing. To get what you love, you first have to be patient with what you have. Look. How beautiful is that? I do think it's a very good message for all of us. Look at the flowers in the little. How cute. So yeah, power and healing. I think power really does come from within. It really does come from us knowing ourselves and being able to play up on our good points while being gentle on ourselves for our weaknesses. Yeah, beautiful. Alright, so with that little message, I think we are going to give way to the reading of Interview with a Vampire. So yeah, I'm going to set up my book and the camera so you can see the book and everything, and I'll see you there. Okay, alright. Bye. And rise. So this lovely compilation was gifted to me by my wonderful friend, my wonderful best friend. And I waited to read it because I wanted to find like a special occasion, since this is such a good edition, really, and it has 3 books. So it has Interview with Vampire, The Vampire Lestat, and The Queen of the Damned. So we are going to start reading. And so this edition begins with a page of praise for Anne Rice, and there's lots of reviews for each of the books that are in this edition, which I find very, very nice and very interesting. So here we have the title, The Vampire Chronicles Collection, Volume 1, Interview with a Vampire, The Vampire Lestat, and the Queen of the Damned. Sorry. Alright, so our video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to read maybe 10 to 15 pages, and if you want, we can keep reading it for as long as you guys want in other videos. I will put in a bookmark, and yeah, that's it. So we begin part 1. I see, said the vampire thoughtfully. Slowly he walked across the room towards the window. For a long time he stood there against the dim light from the Visadero street and the passing beams of traffic. The boy could see the furnishings of the room more clearly now, the round oak table, the chairs. A wash basin hung on one wall with a mirror. He set his briefcase on the table and waited. "But how much tape do you have with you?" asked the vampire, turning now so the boy could see his profile. "Enough for the story of a life." "Sure, if it's a good life. Sometimes I interview as many as 3 or 4 people a night if I'm lucky. But it has to be a good story. That's only fair, isn't it?" "Admirably fair," the vampire answered. "I would like to tell you the story of my life, then. I would like to do that very much." "Great," said the boy, and quickly he removed the small tape recorder from his briefcase, making a check of the cassette and the batteries. "I'm really anxious to hear why you believe this, why you—" "No," said the vampire abruptly. "We can't begin that way. Is your equipment ready?" "Yes," said the boy. "Then sit down. I'm going to turn on the overhead light." "But I thought vampires didn't like light," said the boy. "If you think the dark adds to the atmosphere—" But then he stopped. The vampire was watching him with his back to the window. The boy could make out nothing of his face now, and something about the still figure there distracted him. He started to say something again, but he said nothing. And then he sighed with relief when the vampire moved towards the table and reached for the overheard cord. At once the room was flooded with harsh yellow light, and the boy, staring up at the vampire, could not repress a gasp. His fingers danced backwards on the table to grasp the edge. "Dear God!" he whispered, and then he gazed, speechless, at the vampire. The vampire was utterly white and smooth, as if he were sculpted from bleached bone, and his face was seemingly inanimate as a statue, except for 2 brilliant green eyes that looked down at the boy intently like flames in a skull. But then the vampire smiled almost wistfully, and the smooth white substance of his face moved with the infinitely flexible but minimal lines of a cartoon. "Do you see?" he asked softly. The boy shuddered, lifting his hand as if to shield himself from a powerful light. His eyes moved slowly to the finely tailored black coat he'd only glimpsed in the bar, the long folds of the cape, the black silk tie knotted at the throat, and the gleam of the white collar that was as white as the vampire's flesh. He stared at the vampire's full black hair, the waves that were combed back over the tips of the ears, the curls that barely touched the edge of the white collar. "Now, do you still want the interview?" the vampire asked. The boy's mouth was open before the sound came out. He was nodding, then he said yes. The vampire sat down slowly opposite him, and leaning forward, said gently, confidentially, "Don't be afraid. Just start the tape." And then he reached out over the length of the table. The boy recoiled, sweat running down the sides of his face. The vampire clamped a hand on the boy's shoulder and said, "Believe me, I won't hurt you. I want this opportunity. It's more important to me than you can realize now. I want you to begin." And he withdrew his hand and sat collected, waiting. It took a moment for the boy to wipe his forehead and his lips with a handkerchief, to stammer that the microphone was in the machine, to press the button, to say that the machine was on. "You weren't always a vampire, were you?" he began. "No," answered the vampire. "I was a 25-year-old man when I became a vampire, and the year was 1791. The boy was startled by the preciseness of the date, and he repeated it before he asked, "How did it come about?" "There's a simple answer to that. I don't believe I want to give simple answers," said the vampire. "I think I want to tell the real story." "Yes," the boy said quickly. He was folding his handkerchief over and over and wiping his lips now with it again. "There was a tragedy," the vampire started. "It was my younger brother. He died." And then he stopped, so that the boy cleared his throat and wiped out his face again before stuffing the handkerchief almost impatiently into his pocket. "It's not painful, is it?" he asked timidly. "Does it seem so?" asked the vampire. "No." He shook his head. "It's simply that I've only told the story to one other person, and that was so long ago. No, it's not painful. We were living in Louisiana then. We'd received a land grant and settled 2 indigo plantations on the Mississippi very near New Orleans." "Ah, that's the accent," the boy said softly. For a moment, the vampire stared blankly. "I have an accent." He began to laugh. And the boy, flustered, answered quickly, "I noticed it in the bar when I asked you what you did for a living. It's just a slight sharpness to the consonants, that's all. I never guessed it was French." "It's all right," the vampire assured him. "I'm not as shocked as I pretend to be. It's only that I forget it from time to time. But let me go on." "Please," said the boy. "I was talking about the plantations. They had a great deal to do with it, really, my becoming a vampire. But I'll come to that. Our life there was both luxurious and primitive, and we ourselves found it extremely attractive. You see, we lived far better than we could have ever lived in France. Perhaps seeming so, no. Perhaps the sheer wilderness of Louisiana only made it seem so, but seeming so, it was. I remember the imported furniture that cluttered the house," the vampire smiled, "and the harpsichord, that was lovely. My sister used to play it. On summer evenings, she would sit at the keys with her back to the open French windows, and I can still remember that thin, rapid music, and the vision of the swamp rising beyond her. The moss-hung cypresses floating against the sky. And there were the sounds of the swamp, a chorus of creatures, the cry of the birds. I think we loved it, It made the rosewood furniture all the more precious, the music more delicate and desirable. Even when the wisteria tore the shutters off the attic windows and worked its tendrils right into the whitewashed brick in less than a year, yes, we loved it. All except my brother. I don't think I ever heard him complain of anything, but I knew how he felt. My father was dead then, and I was head of the family, and I had to defend him constantly from my mother and sister. They wanted to take him visiting and to New Orleans for parties, but he hated these things. I think he stopped going altogether before he was 12. Prayer was what mattered to him. Prayer and his leather-bound lives of the saints. Finally, I built him an oratory removed from the house, and he began to spend most of every day there, and often the early evening. It was ironic, really. He was so different from us, so different from everyone, and it was so regular. There was nothing extraordinary about me whatsoever. The vampire smiled. Sometimes in the evening, I would go out to him and find him in the garden near the oratory, sitting absolutely composed on a stone bench there, and I'd tell him my troubles, the difficulties I had with the slaves, and how I distrusted the overseer of the weather or my brokers, all the problems that made up the length and breadth of my existence. And he would listen, making only a few comments, always sympathetic, so that when I left him, I had the distinct impression he had solved everything for me. I didn't think I could deny him anything, and I vowed that no matter how it would break my heart to lose him, he could enter the priesthood when the time came. Of course, I was wrong. The vampire stopped. For a moment, the boy only gazed at him, and then he started as if awakened from deep thought, and he floundered, as if he could not find the right words. He didn't want to be a priest? The boy asked. The vampire studied him as if trying to discern the meaning of his expression. Then he said, I meant that I was wrong about myself, about my not denying him anything. His eyes moved over to the far wall and fixed on the panes of the window. He began to see visions. Real visions? The boy asked, but again there was hesitation, as if he were thinking of something else. I didn't think so, the vampire answered. It happened when he was 15. He was very handsome then. He had the smoothest skin and the largest blue eyes. He was robust, not as thin as I am now, and was then. But his eyes, it was as if when I looked into his eyes, I was standing alone on the edge of the world, on a windswept ocean beach. There was nothing but the soft roar of the waves. Well, he said, his eyes still fixed on the window panes. He began to see visions. He only hinted at this at first, and he stopped taking his meals altogether. He lived in the oratory. At any hour of day or night, I could find him on the barest flagstones kneeling before the altar. And the oratory itself was neglected. He stopped tending the candles, or changing the altar cloths, or even sweeping out the leaves. One night I became really alarmed when I stood in the rose arbor, watching him for 1 solid hour, during which he never moved from his knees, and never once lowered his arms, which he held outstretched in the form of a cross. The slaves all thought he was mad. The vampire raised his eyebrows in wonder. I was convinced that he was only overzealous, that in his love for God he had perhaps gone too far. Then he told me about the visions. both Saint Dominic and the Blessed Virgin Mary had come to him in the oratory. They had told him he was to sell all our property in Louisiana, everything we owned, and use the money to do God's work in France. My brother was to be a great religious leader, to return the country to its former fervor, to turn the tide against atheism and the revolution. Of course, he had no money of his own. I was to sell the plantations and our townhouses in New Orleans and give the money to him. Again, the vampire stopped, and the boy sat motionless, regarding him, astonished. Excuse me, he whispered. What did you say? Did you sell the plantations? No, said the vampire, his face calm as it had been from the start. I laughed at him, and he became incensed. He insisted his command came from the Virgin herself. Who besides her disregarded? Who indeed? He asked softly, as if we were thinking of this again. Who indeed? And the more he tried to convince me, the more I laughed. It was nonsense, I told him. The product of an immature and even morbid mind. The oratory was a mistake, I said to him. I would have it torn down at once. He would go to school in New Orleans and get such inane notions out of his head. I don't remember all that I said, but I remember the feeling. Behind all this contemptuous dismissal on my part was a smoldering anger and a disappointment. I was bitterly disappointed. I didn't believe him at all. But that's understandable, said the boy quickly when the vampire paused, his expression of astonishment softening. I mean, anyone would have believed him. Would anyone have believed him? Is it so understandable? The vampire looked at the boy. I think perhaps it was vicious egotism. Let me explain. I loved my brother, as I told you, and at times I believed him to be a living saint. I encouraged him in his prayer and meditations, as I said, and I was willing to give him up to the priesthood. And if someone had told me of a saint in Arles or Lourdes who saw visions, I would have believed it. I was a Catholic. I believed in saints. I lit tapers before their marble statues in churches. I knew the pictures, their symbols, their names, but I couldn't believe my brother. Not only did I not believe he saw visions, I couldn't entertain the notion for a moment. Now why? Because he was my brother. Holy he might be, peculiar most definitely, but Francis of Assisi? No, not my brother. No brother of mine could be such. That is egotism, do you see? The boy thought about it before he answered, and then he nodded and said that yes, he thought that he did. Perhaps he saw the visions, said the vampire. Then you don't claim to know now whether he did or not? No, but I do know that he never wavered in his conviction for a second. That I know now, and knew then, the night he left my room crazed and grieved. He never wavered for an instant, and within minutes he was dead. How? The boy asked. He simply walked out of the French doors onto the gallery and stood for a moment at the head of the brick stairs. And then he fell. He was dead when I reached the bottom, his neck broken. The vampire shook his head in consternation, but his face was still serene. Did you see him fall? Asked the boy. Did he lose his footing? No, but 2 of the servants saw it happen. They said that he had looked up as if he had just seen something in the air. Then his entire body moved forward as if being swept by a wind. One of them said he was about to say something when he fell. I thought that he was about to say something too, but it was at that moment I turned away from the window. My back was turned when I heard the noise. He glanced at the tape recorder. I could not forgive myself. I felt responsible for his death, he said. And everyone else seemed to think I was responsible as well. But how could they? You said they saw him fall. It wasn't a direct accusation. They simply knew that something had passed between us that was unpleasant, that we had argued minutes before the fall. The servants had heard us, my mother had heard us. My mother would not stop asking me what had happened, and while my brother, who was so quiet, had been shouting. Then my sister joined in, and of course I refused to say. I was so bitterly shocked and miserable that I had no patience with anyone, only the vague determination they would not know about his visions. They would not know that he had become, finally, not a saint, but only a fanatic. My sister went to bed rather than face the funeral, and my mother told everyone in the parish that something horrible had happened in my room, which I would not reveal, and even the police questioned me, on the word of my own mother. Finally, the priest came to see me and demanded to know what had gone on. I told no one. It was only a discussion, I said. I was not on the gallery when he fell. I protested, and they all stared at me as if I'd killed him. And I felt that I'd killed him. I sat in the parlor beside his coffin for 2 days thinking, I have killed him. I stared at his face until spots appeared before my eyes, and I nearly fainted. The back of his skull had been shattered on the pavement, and his head had the wrong shape on the pillow. I forced myself to stare at it, to study it simply because I could hardly endure the pain and the smell of decay. And I was tempted over and over to try to open his eyes. All these were mad thoughts, mad impulses. The main thought was this. I had laughed at him. I had not believed him. I had not been kind to him. He had fallen because of me. This really happened, didn't it? The boy whispered. You're telling me something. That's true. Yes, said the vampire, looking at him without surprise. I want to go on telling you, but as his eyes passed over the boy and returned to the window, he showed only faint interest in the boy, who seemed engaged in some silent inner struggle. But you said you didn't know about the visions, that you, a vampire, didn't know for certain whether... I want to take things in order, said the vampire. I want to go on telling you things as they happened. No, I don't know about the visions to this day. And again he waited until the boy said, Yes, please go on. Alright, so we are going to stop here. This is page 10. And if you guys want, I'm sorry for the angles of the book and stuff. It's very difficult since I have a very really bad quality tripod, but I hope you guys liked it. If you guys want me to keep reading it, you just tell me in the comments and I'll just make videos that are exclusively reading the book. In that way I can have like 40/50 minute videos where I read as much as I can, taking breaks of course. But yeah, okay, so I hope you guys liked this video